Sonoma County. He grew up in Sonoma County and now lives in Cotati with his wife and children, where he is a middle school science teacher. Like most of us, David is an obsessive mushroom hobbyist who loves to find, photograph, and identify mushrooms. He's also been on the SOMA board since 2021. SOMA is short for Sonoma County Mycological Association. So that said, please welcome David Healy.
I feel like there's different options.
Yes, I can.
Cool.
So go ahead, share your screen.
So I clicked share, and then do I pick one of those or just do the main one?
I would do the PDF, or I'm sorry, the PowerPoint. Is that the PowerPoint?
That's not like that's my
Okay.
downloaded one. I have it just like as my background. It's like when I click share,
Okay.
I just pull this up right here.
Okay.
Okay,
And
so I am
then
there.
up here, you can do that.
Bringing me back to teaching on Zoom in 2020. All right, good morning, it's not first period right now. All right, good. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today, I'm going to be talking about mushrooms of Sonoma County and Marin. I snuck that in there because there's not a ton of legal places to forage for mushrooms in Sonoma County or the Bay Area. So some of these photos I wanted to be truthful are from Marin, and there's some excellent habitat in Marin as well that I'll talk about. All right, so Mike gave most of my intro there. My name is David Healy. I grew up in Sonoma County, and I went to UC Santa Cruz. And I know last month you had someone from UC Santa Cruz as well, Christian Schwartz.
Don't worry.
And when I was there, I think we were actually there at the same time, and I wasn't into mushrooms at all. In fact, I don't remember noticing a single mushroom the entire time I was there. I think I was looking up instead of looking down. I was really into plants and farming and nature and stuff, but I just was not at all ready for mushrooms. In fact, I would have categorized myself as someone that was scared of mushrooms. I have anxious mycophobe on there because I grew up in a household where I was just told basically don't touch mushrooms. I knew some were poisonous. I figured if I just avoided them completely, I would be good. So now I am obsessed with mushrooms, and I, as mentioned, am on the board for the Sonoma County Mycological Association. I teach 7th and 8th grade science at a middle school in Santa Rosa, and I'm delighted to be here. And in terms of if you guys have questions, obviously it's an intimate crowd here. I do best, I feel like, when people are, making comments or asking stuff in the moment. So feel free if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You can certainly wait till the end if you want. You can find me on Instagram and iNaturalist. And I sometimes talk about mushrooms on a podcast called the Mushroom Pizza Podcast. I'll talk about that maybe at the end. So topics I'm going to cover, and we're already a little past 7:30, and I tend to ramble. So the hope is that we cover all this. I may skirt through a few things here, but basically I'm going to talk about my obsession with mushroom origin story. I'm going to talk about where to find mushrooms in Sonoma County, talk about some specific tree types to learn to recognize, and some of my favorite mushrooms to find. I'll talk about toxic and poisonous mushrooms, and I hope I can take some of those flyers. I feel like I would absolutely distribute those. And if we have time, I'll get into the cool and weird mushrooms of Sonoma County, and then maybe end it with resources and how to get involved in the mycological community. And you're already taking the first steps by being here at an event. So the origin story is winter of 2016 was a really wet year. And I worked on a farm in Healdsburg. And again, I was scared of mushrooms. But one wet, rainy day, similar to today, my boss and I were driving to a farm store in Sebastopol, and he goes, "Dude, I think that was a Mario mushroom." So we pull over, and what I learned later was an Amanita muscaria. There's a flush of them on the side of the road, and we go over, and I've never seen anything like it. I've seen them in cartoons and stuff, and my boss was a little more curious about mushrooms already, and he puts his hand on one and takes a photo, and I was into photography and nature, so I took some photos. But genuinely, I thought that maybe I touched one. So when I got home, I like aggressively washed my hands. I was so freaked out. I knew mushrooms, you know, they were bad. Um, but that was kind of the spark that started it all. And my boss, again, he had a little interest in mushrooms. So he pulled out a book that I realized that I did recognize a little bit. And my next slide, I'll talk about that. And it was a mushroom book. So we flipped through the book, and oh yeah, there's some interesting looking stuff and some weird looking people in there. Um, and then in the following weeks, we kind of just started walking around the property. It was oak woodlands, beautiful property, and again, not much to do in soaking wet winter months on a farm. So we found ourselves looking for mushrooms and just photographing them. And I was pretty good at plant ID. So I thought, you know what? I have photos of mushrooms. I'm going to go home and just, without any of the proper vocabulary, try to verbally describe the mushrooms I saw. And I figured I'd be able to identify them. So I'm just writing like white mushroom with dots on. I mean, like I struck out. I genuinely remember like I didn't confidently ID a single mushroom. So I was like, man, this is kind of challenging and cool, and maybe a little bit of a challenge. So over the next couple weeks, we took more and more photos. We found some other books, and that brings me to this book right here. If you're into mushrooms, you certainly recognize this book. It's David Aurora's All That the Rain Promises and More. In fact, this photo was taken at UC Santa Cruz. It's not David Aurora on the cover. It's a professor at the school, and I think they were going to perform, and he saw some oaks and some chanterelles. He grabbed them, and this iconic photo was born. And I really recognize this book because my dad was a biology high school teacher, and my whole life he had this book in his room. And I genuinely remember like sophomore year of high school, my friends and I looking through this book and literally making fun of these people. So like I hate to say it, like these were some weirdos, total freaks. So this book was like burned in my eyes. So my boss pulled this out years later, and I'm like, oh man, this freaking weird book. And in a funny full circle moment a couple years ago, I had a chance to pay homage to this book at a Soma Halloween party, and I dressed like the dude. I didn't have any chanterelles, so I brought some pumpkins because it was October. But I borrowed the trombone from the middle school music teacher, and sure enough, I'd become one of those mushroom freaks from the book. So a beautiful moment for me. And again, if you've never flipped through that book, you should. But I'm sure most of you had. So anyway, where to find mushrooms in Sonoma County. A theme of this talk is going to be you can find mushrooms everywhere all the time. And a lot of these slides, not all of them, but a lot of them, there's a lot on there. This slideshow is meant to be like an educational piece that I'd be happy to share with anyone. I'm not going to read every bullet point on this by any means. I'm going to give you the highlights. But moral of the story is you can find mushrooms anywhere and everywhere. The more you get into it, the more you're hooked on mushrooms. You can look year round all over the place. And I'm going to talk about some of my favorite places to look and maybe some of your best opportunities to find edibles, including mushrooms, including edibles and cool and weird ones. So in Sonoma County, probably the 4 best trees to look for mushrooms under are oak trees, pines, tan oaks, and Doug firs. And I'm going to get into some specific ones here. So my favorite tree probably to look for mushrooms under is called the live oak, or Quercus agrifolia. You might recognize it as an evergreen oak tree, which means it doesn't drop its leaves in the winter, and it has the smaller prickly leaves. If you've ever stepped on those, they hurt. But they're incredible hosts to all sorts of mushrooms, deadly mushrooms, edible mushrooms, and just lots of diversity. They're very common in Sonoma County and Marin. And, they're characterized by big gnarled branches and, again, evergreen prickly leaves. Here's those leaves with some young acorns on them, and very, very common. So you can find under oaks, specifically live oaks. I know Liz has some with her right now. The golden chanterelle, which is some people's favorite edible mushroom. Yeah, hold it up there. Beautiful. You can find all sorts of tasty stuff, and you can find deadly mushrooms like the death cap and Amanita ocreata, which are on the flyers there. So I'm going to start here with Cantharellus californicus, the golden chanterelle. And these are probably the most iconic mushroom in California. In fact, it just became the California state mushroom a couple years ago. I will say in the mycology world, that was a little controversial. I think some people thought there's other cooler, better fitting mushrooms for that. And plus, I think Oregon has chanterelle. It's just, they're great, but it's not the most like weird, cool, hip mushroom to have as a state mushroom. So maybe I'll touch on that again. However, I think everyone's agrees that having a state mushroom is better than not having a mushroom at all. And it's the first step in getting fungus recognized on a state level, and maybe that'll lead to legislation, and who knows, maybe more education opportunities and more places opening up to mushroom foraging. So these chanterelles, they're characterized by false gills, so they don't have deep folds in them. If you saw them on the ID table today, actually, it was a really good opportunity to see them right next to the jack-o'-lantern mushroom, which is probably the most commonly confused. They have similarities, and yeah, it's a toxic mushroom. So I think someone told me in good faith that most of the toxic mushrooms that get eaten in California are those, because people are eager to eat chanterelles and they find those. They won't kill you, but they will not be fun to eat. All right, so our state mushroom. And here's a photo of some good chanterelle habitat. Now, I will say this, it's either good or bad depending on your level of tolerance for poison oak, because these things absolutely love poison oak. In fact, you'll often find them in intersections of live oak with blackberry and bramble and poison oak. So some people are not, I don't want to fully say they're not allergic to it, but some people are not immune or are not likely to get rashes from it. So they have a leg up when it comes to chanterelle hunting. So you can't really see anything there, but I promise you there, amongst all the poison oak and blackberry, there are flickers of gold, and that's where an excellent textbook example of chanterelle habitat. So here's some photos of young chanterelles where you see the ridges or false gills. Again, once you find these in real life and you actually find a chanterelle, I feel like you'll just know, like, oh yeah, that's what a false gill is. But it's easy to convince yourself you find something, wishful thinking when you find something like a jack-o'-lantern and you have no experience. Oftentimes, they are. What's that?
You have a question.
Oh, yeah. Can you see it? Okay, yeah, it would have been.
I was trying to not.
Again, I haven't taught on Zoom here in 5, 6 years.
Your cursor over there where it says your screen share.
I know when I'm going down there, it's like pulling up that.
So it's here, I think. Oops, no. There we go.
Okay.
So here's the chat.
This coast like another species. Okay, great question. So you'll find these coast-like live oaks in urban settings a lot. And you will certainly find mycorrhizal relationships. So, okay, mycorrhizal mushrooms means that they're in a relationship with an oak tree. So the question is, if you see these in an urban setting, might you find chanterelles or other mushrooms? I've never found chanterelles in urban oaks in Sonoma County. There are some stands near my campus where I teach where I find this other mushroom I was just going to show you here. Come on. And which is in a mycorrhizal relationship. So you will find stuff. I have not found an urban chanterelle spot, but I would say it's certainly possible. It seems like the larger the forest, the more mycelial network, the more likely you are. But I find candy caps and other things in urban settings, but golden chanterelles I have not. I don't want to say blanket statement no for everything though. But this is a good segue to this Lactarius alnicola or alnicola is probably the most commonly confused mushroom with chanterelles. Sometimes it looks very chanterelle-like, and it's growing in oak duff. And again, wishful thinking. People often on mushroom forums take photos of these thinking they found a chanterelle. When they're younger, they're white, and they're called a milk cap because they ooze this white lactation. But when they dry out and the sun hits them right, they look gold. So some people will call this the real false chanterelle because there's kind of a group of false chanterelles, and this one usually gets left out. All right, when it comes to mycorrhizal relationships with oak trees, my favorite is the porcini, Boletus edulis grandedulus. A lot of people affiliate this with pine trees, and they totally grow with oak trees. And for a while, there was kind of a hush-hushness about that, where at least in the community, like, don't tell everyone they grow with oaks because people are just going to go find them. But that adds to the fun, the challenge of it. For me, again, I have a romantic just relationship with oak porcini. They're just my favorite. They're usually the first mushroom to fruit every fall. And oftentimes, if we get an early rain, you can find these September, October, when it's still warm outside, the leaves are crispy. There's not a single other mushroom in the forest. You would never walk through that forest and think, yeah, I'm going to find porcini. And then if you're lucky, you do. And these are some people's favorite edible. They're certainly one of my tops. And again, here's proof they grow with live oak trees. Now, they certainly don't grow with all live oak trees, and I've never found them in the same forest that I also found chanterelles. It seems like it might be one or the other. But there are all sorts of delicious edible boletes. And for those of you that maybe don't know, boletes are these mushrooms with a porous underside. So they don't have gills. It's kind of sponge-like. And there's a bunch of them that are delicious edibles. When they're young, they look much different. And they're actually deep below the duff, the layer of leaves. And sometimes all you see is just like leaves kind of poking up or a change in texture in the duff. And you dig under there and maybe you find one, but not always. And some clues for these, I seem to find them in areas with sandy soil, live oak trees, and Amanita muscaria, which is that mushroom behind me here. So those are kind of clues or tells that you might be in good oak porcini habitat. A bunch of them there. All right, another cool bolete, so porous underside that you can find under the same oak trees is called the queen bolete. This is another one that people often affiliate with different trees, maybe conifers or on the coast, but more inland Sonoma County, these grow under live oak trees as well. And these I do sometimes find under the exact same tree as porcini, the same season. They're a little bit different in look here. They often have this white coloration on the cap. It's called a bloom. And they also have a really heavily netted pattern on the stipe, which is called reticulation. But flavor-wise, taste-wise, they're very similar to a porcini. As they age, the underside will get this kind of yellow-green color. I do not find these every year under oaks. Some years they're gangbusters. Other years I don't find them. Typically find porcini most seasons, so it's not a guarantee. Another one, same trees, same type of year, or at the same time of year, you can find butter boletes under oak trees. Another delicious edible bolete. This is characterized by a pink cap, kind of a bulbous base. And the big one here is that they turn blue when you handle them. It's not incredibly dark blue. There's another mushroom I'll show you in a minute that turns blue as well. But these are just a delicious one. Certainly don't find these every year either. But it's a really tasty, fun one. Yes. It's my understanding it's a chemical reaction with oxygen. Do you know better than I? Do you have a better answer? Yeah, I think it's like, yeah. It's a reaction with it's an oxidation process. compared to something like psilocybe species, which are turning blue, which indicates the presence of psilocybin, which is a totally different thing. These only turn blue when handled or agitated a little bit. And sometimes it takes a bit of time. Here they are, though, growing under oak trees in Sonoma County. I don't find them all the time. Again, I don't find them every year, but when I do, I'm very excited because they are delicious. And I wanted to highlight one other yellow pored bolete that grow under oaks that is different. You'll notice the one on the right is way more vibrant yellow. That's called Areoboletus. And some people, I think, confuse these because it's a yellow pored bolete. They have a much larger porous surface and very, very, very vivid bright, whereas the butter boletes is kind of a pale, creamy yellow. And I'm sorry, yellow, I mean. And I have them here together. The bright ones are with the larger pores are your Areoboletus. The tighter pores, and you see a little bluing on the stem and underside are the butter boletes. And then just threw this in there because I have found this. And actually, you know what? It ties back to the urban question. I find butter boletes under eastern oaks in my neighborhood. Not every year, but sometimes. So there you have it. And then when you cook them, they really turn that blue, dark blue color. And then last one, I couldn't leave this out, is the Boletus borosii, or the white king. I've only found these a couple times, but again, under the same tree, same habitat. So on good years, you can really find all these delicious boletes side by side. Now, some people do eat these Areoboletus as well. I've eaten them a couple times. There's one that is really gooey. It's called it's a viscid cap. Those don't seem all that appetizing. But this other one that has a dry cap, Areoboletus citrinoporus, is a lovely edible. It has kind of sour, acidic notes to it. I've eaten it a couple times. So all of these grow in the same habitat under live oaks in the fall. And then there's this one, the liver bolete. This one stains aggressively blue, much darker blue, and very, very, very rapidly. And it has red pores. Recently, I've heard of people claiming that they love to eat this mushroom. I never have. I had never heard that until recently. Has anyone here eaten Swilelis? Ario or okay. Yeah. So again, I've seen some claims saying they're people's favorite mushroom, or one person saying that. Yeah, on Facebook. If you're on certain forums, you might have seen that. And I don't think it's a troll. I think it's real. But I'm reluctant. And I should point out there is a red pored bolete, the Satan's bolete, that is potentially very poisonous, potentially deadly. It doesn't have amatoxins. I'm not certain on that. You don't hear about cases of it all too much. It was really abundant this fall. So it's certainly not a beginner one. I'm not advising anyone to eat red pored boletes, but these are very common under oaks in the fall, and these will grow in urban environments as well. To me, they're just one of the coolest mushrooms that you cut them open. There's viral videos on social media, people cutting these open, and they stain really fast and really neat. And one of the trippiest, weirdest mushrooms you'll ever see. I brought a couple of these into my middle school classroom this fall, and kids were just tripping out, like, kidding me? So yeah, the royalty of the woods. Here's the king and queen by each other. Here's a pile of both of those on a really good year. I like to eat them when they're fresh and young like that, really dense, nice flavor. Here's the Areoboletus, the butter bolete, and the king all together. And there you go. One more, there's kind of a theme here of people of mushrooms that grow with oaks that most people affiliate with other trees. And this is one too, the candy cap mushroom. A lot of people think coastal pine or mixed forest, which is where you will certainly find them, but they grow under live oaks as well. These I find in my neighborhood in Sonoma County under live oaks. There's kind of a checklist to identifying these that I'll talk about a little bit later on when we're talking about pines. But if you don't know candy caps, they have this maple syrup flavor. They lactate this kind of skim milk, light milk color, and they exude this maple flavor when they're dried and rehydrated. That's delicious in desserts or even savory dishes. Really cool mushroom. And then there's all sorts of amanitas growing under oak trees as well. I personally do not eat amanitas. Kind of circling back to my anxious mycophobe days, some people's favorite mushroom on earth is called Amanita villosa. It's fruiting right now. I'm watching people post videos of eating them and stuff. Maybe so, or I'd be happy to eat them if someone else prepared them for me. But I'll just be anxious for a day or two probably. I've found the most beautiful Amanita villosas. Again, they're supposed to be just tremendous, but I haven't gone there yet because there are deadly lookalikes, and I tend to be neurotic and stuff like that. But you can find all sorts of amanitas under oaks, as well as the muscaria, that Smurf mushroom, the Mario mushroom that pulled me in the first place to mycology. In the bottom left is Amanita novanupta. There are a bunch of those on the table here today. Those apparently are edible. I've never met someone that said they were like the best, but I've heard of people eating them. Again, amanitas are certainly not for beginners because there are two deadly ones that there's flyers over here about that have gotten a lot of attention this year. Some, hey, it's my background. I swear I didn't know I was going to be on here, but that's just always my background. You can find lion's mane with oaks. Don't find them all the time, but certainly do. Delicious edible. You can find chicken of the woods on oak. They're typically more commonly growing on eucalyptus trees in Sonoma County, but they do grow on oaks. I don't love eating them, but they're cool to photograph. I have eaten them. They're easily identifiable. They grow in the summer, late summer months. So cool mushroom to learn. All right, let's move on to pine trees. In Sonoma County and Marin and stuff, the main pine tree hosting mushrooms is going to be Pinus muricata, the bishop pine tree. Very common on the coast. And they have dark blue-green needles in pairs of two. And here's a photo of just like a classic stand of coastal Sonoma County bishop pines. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. So yes, bishop pines, they require fire for is that what you mean? Yeah, for the cones to open. There's a really good example of that in Point Reyes. There's a huge fire in 95 or something, where all of a sudden it's like very abruptly all pine trees. And there's a little plaque there that just explains why. There's fire went through there and it regrew a bunch of these bishop pine trees. Absolutely. 85. All right. So 40 years old now. Yeah. And that's close to habitat for all sorts of delicious, yummy edibles in Point Reyes. So porcini, the same ones. Can I move this? Yeah, I can. Should I move it to the bottom? I don't know. All right. Okay. So this classically under pines is what people think porcini. So porcini under pines. I'll talk a little bit more about that candy cap and a little bit about cauliflower mushroom here. Here's a little story of how to find porcini under pines. That's my son and my wife walking through some pines. And similar to the oaks, I find that looking under pine trees, you're kind of looking for intersections of other plants maybe too. So there's this grass. I don't know the name of this grass. You'll often find blackberry too under pine, sometimes poison oak as well. But this understory action happening in tandem with the trees seems to like good places to look. So you're in a pine forest, you see some grass maybe. There's also this mushroom called the spy, and these grow under oaks as well. And I believe they have a parasitic, or they have some sort of relationship with porcini, I've been told. And if you see this mushroom, it's an indicator that you're in the right habitat, and they're usually fruiting about the same time, sometimes a little bit earlier maybe. Clitopilus prunulus. Apparently some people eat these as well, never have, but it's a great indicator that you're in habitat. I call the other spy. If you get lucky enough to see someone just belligerently shaved porcini in that area and left it, then you know proof of concept, I'm in the right spot. Personally, I know it doesn't matter ecologically, like something's going to eat that or it's going to decompose. I think it's a little bit like, I don't like it. You know, it's like, I try not to leave a trace. I don't know. Some people say whatever. If I do that in field dress, like where you're doing it in the field, I just bury it or chuck them somewhere. I also don't want people to just see it. But this one here, where you can see my boot, someone just did it in the parking lot. I'm like, man, I don't know. But if you get lucky, you're out there, you find some porcini. There's my son, Olin, with his first ever porcini last year, and my wife. So fun times. There is such limited habitat for porcini, at least where you can legally hunt salt point rays, that it can be pretty competitive. And I think because it's usually that first mushroom of the fall, and people just love porcini. It is competitive. So sometimes you go out to Salt Point, good porcini season, there's just cars lining the parking or this lining the roads. But again, part of the challenge, they can't find them all. And if you're persistent, you will find your own patch, or maybe you go out to some other areas. They range tremendously in size. When they're young, a lot of people prefer them young and dense like that in the middle. And then they get huge, and believe it or not, yeah, those are the same mushrooms. When they're all big and gnarly, like on the right side there, typically people are going to dehydrate them or dry them, make powders with them, or cut them up and add them to stuff that you cook later on. I love to make porcini salt, give it out as a gift for the holidays and stuff, but they have a tremendous umami, rich flavor. Very, very yummy. More porcini under pond. The first one I ever found was in Mill Valley in my grandparents' neighborhood. I'd been hearing about porcini. I knew exactly what to look for. I'd looked for months, or even, I guess not months because it was only November, but the year before I scoured habitats and stuff. And then we showed up on Thanksgiving Day. We park, and then like I looked down this kind of hillside in my grandparents' neighbor's yard, and I just saw this cap, and it's almost reddish brown. It's so specifically identifiable. I knew a porcini. So I went down there. It's Thanksgiving. I'm like, oh shoot, it's on their property. I guess I'll go knock on the neighbor's door. Obviously, they weren't there because it was Thanksgiving. Or not obviously, but turns out they weren't there. So I leave it alone. I go back. I'm deliberating for like a couple hours. I post on Facebook because I was I used to be more active on the like mushroom Facebook forums. I still am on there lurking a little bit, but I posted a photo, and then I just got clowned on by so many people like, dude, like obviously take it. And so I was like, man, I still feel bad. So I went and I knocked on the door again. No one answered. And I'm like, all right, it's literally like right here. It's kind of mature too. Like if they knew they had that in their yard and they would have already cooked it up for Thanksgiving. So I justified it, I took it. And then every time, the next few times I went to my grandparents' house, I like went and knocked on the door. I never connected with those people because I wanted to say like, hey, you have porcini here. And I'm like guilty conscious. I wanted to just like spill my guts. I'm so sorry I took your porcini. Oh no, yeah, you're here. 8 years later. Uh, those trees are all gone now too. Sadly, they all died or had disease. Yes. Oh, totally. Uh, Sadly, they're not with us anymore. And the house was sold West California. Like, there you go. Like up the hill, you can walk down to Tam High. So yeah, I've noticed though over the years there's less and less pines, and I think that as they get diseased and kind of sickly, they get really tall and big, and they just get taken out. But proof of concept, bro, here right here, prompt, So there you go. Absolutely. I hope you find some. Candy caps. This has become one. I love candy caps. They're so interesting and so different than all other mushrooms. Again, they have this maple flavor. There were some on the table today. And if you just smelled them, it's not going to hit you like, oh, that's maple. But if you dehydrate them and then rehydrate them, they go through this chemical process and they take on. It's literally, I can't. I don't know the name. The cool mushroom people know the exact name of the chemical compound. Anyone know it? Yes, that. It's the same compound in maple syrup. So it's like it is the same thing. I've been trying to eat healthier lately, and I've been making this like oatmeal chia porridge stuff without sugar, and it's like not the best flavor, pretty bland. And then recently I started, when I do the overnight soak of the oats and stuff, I break up a candy cap and put it in there, and a little vanilla and some salt. And it's a really nice flavor. Eat that with a little fruit. So I've been eating more candy caps than ever lately. And I'm like not that I was not stoked on them, but I'm re excited to find a bunch next year. Last year at one of the Soma meetings, I made candy cap Rice Krispie treats, and they were really, really good. It's the easiest thing to make if you have candy caps, but that combination of butter and marshmallow is just yummy. So really cool. I haven't explored using them in a ton of savory dishes, but I know they pair well with pork and lots of things. So people do cook them. People eat them fresh as well, but they're typically sought after for dehydrating and getting that maple flavor. All right, moving on to another tree in Sonoma County. This one's a really exciting one, the tan oak tree. I don't find these too much inland Sonoma County. There are pockets of them, but coastal Sonoma County up into Mendocino and certainly Marin is the tan oak tree. And these host some of the most exciting, unique mushrooms. They have this kind of wavy tooth, larger leaf. They're oak-like. They have a little acorn-ish thing. And they host, let's see, I'm going to skip straight to it. The Matsutake. This is the mushroom right here that's on my shirt. One of the more divisive mushrooms, like this is some people's absolute favorite mushroom, and then some people just don't get it, don't like it. They're very different in application. Like this is not a mushroom probably to do like a buttercream sauce with. Now, certainly might. But they have a little bit different usage, I think. Some cultures value these tremendously. People always talk about at some point in the 2000s, they were selling for like thousands of dollars a pound or something like that. Because you're certainly not going to make that if you find these today. And instead, though, I encourage you to explore eating them a bit. However, they might not be the most beginner mushroom because they are a white mushroom with gills, which is like if you were to just really generally want to avoid a classification of mushroom to not die and get poisoned from, you would just never eat a mushroom with white gills that sort of look like that. Like, so I'm not urging you that, but maybe when you start, that's a good idea. As you get to know, these mushrooms are incredibly different than those Amanita species that are deadly toxic. But yeah, there you go. They are characterized, and some people say they don't smell this. I certainly do, and maybe that's just because I read it in that Aurora book. They smell like gym socks and Red Hots, which is like a funky cinnamon smell. I smell exactly that. Not everyone does. But yeah, and people tend to prefer them when they're really young like this, before their gills are showing, before the veil breaks open, it's called. But you can eat them in any shape and size. They're also characterized by a really, really dense, firm, rubbery base of their stipe or their stem. They'll kind of have this like cinnamon brownish scaling on the cap sometimes and on the stipe as well, and it tapers down, and you can almost see like this like cinnamon coloration on it sometimes. Really a fun one to find and cook if you're one of the people that ends up liking them. All right, this is another one that was on the table. Yes. Yes. No. With any mushroom too, like candy caps, which have odor, there's a checklist that you want to like hit all of them, or at least most of them on. Because again, and to be honest, my nose, like I do not trust, I don't think my palate is the best for sniffing mushrooms, to be honest. Because sometimes people describe things that I certainly do not smell. So I don't trust my nose at all. Some people are incredible with it. So that's a personal thing, I would say, certainly. But again, some people like say they don't pick up that exact description. All right, hedgehog mushrooms are another awesome edible, one of my absolute favorites. There were some of these. They were pretty old and banged up, but they're on the ID table here tonight. And they're called hedgehogs because they literally have these little teeth. They look like cute little hedgehogs. So they don't have gills. They don't have pores. They have these teeth, and the spores fall out of those. There's two different species. One's much smaller. They called belly button hedgehogs. They sometimes have an indentation on the cap. I think at my next slide, I have a photo of that. Looks kind of like a belly button. And then there's a larger species that gets much, much bigger. And I have a cool story about that. I'll kind of speed through here. The first time I ever went out to Salt Point State Park on a foray for the Sonoma Mycology Association, I found this large hedgehog. And I posted a photo of it on Facebook. And this dude, if you're in the mushroom world at all, probably recognize his name. Alan Rockefeller messaged me on Facebook and said, hey, any chance you kept that mushroom? I'm studying it right now, and I want to sequence it for DNA. And I was just fresh in this mushroom world. And I'm like, Alan Rockefeller messaged me. Like, he wants this mushroom. I thought it was like, I found a rare mushroom. Turns out that's not true at all. It's not a rare mushroom at all. He just in that moment needed the DNA of it. So he goes, yeah, you could, dehydrate it and mail it to me or something. And I was like, dude, I'll drive it to you tomorrow. So that was my plan. I drove it straight to Counterculture Labs in Oakland. I don't think he works out of that anymore. I'm not sure if it's still a thing, but a lot of people were doing really cool community science out of this lab in Oakland. Drove it straight to him. He showed me like a tour of the facility, taught me how to use micropipettes to make transfers and use an airflow or air hood. I was just like in awe, couldn't believe it. Such a cool experience, such a highlight of my early mycology world journey. And then a couple years later, he messaged me again and said, hey, any chance you have photos of that mushroom? And I said, yeah, I think I have a couple of photos. Looked through, sent him them. And he's all, yeah, we actually used that specimen to name this new species, Hydnum washingtonianum. Again, not a rare thing at all, but they were just in the process of renaming the mushroom, and they needed specimen to connect the DNA to the new name. And so in a way, it felt cool to be a part of that. Obviously, it could have been anyone. But I want to note on this too, when you're looking under tan oaks, there's this shrub called huckleberry, and it's a really good indicator that you're in habitat for a lot of edible mushrooms. And it's an understory shrub growing with tan oaks, and you'll find those hedgehogs as well as the black trumpet right here. This might be my favorite edible mushroom under tan oaks, and it's certainly the hardest to find because they are black and elusive, and they don't fruit in the same quantities every year, I feel like, as the hedgehogs, and another one I'm going to talk about in a moment. This has been a tremendous year for black trumpets. They've been fruiting early and consistently, and they're a really, really fun mushroom to find. There's one single one. There was a couple on the table here tonight. They don't have gills, they don't have teeth, they just kind of have like a porous surface, but it's a delicious, really cool mushroom that grows all over the coast. I've never found them in Marin, but I know people do find them in Point Reyes as well. All right, this Amanita, known as like Kokora, Kokali, grows in the fall under tan oaks as well. Here's another one that I've never eaten. People love these, at least some people. I think they're one of the most like handsome, cool mushrooms to photograph and find. There's some large ones with my hat on it and stuff, but there are certainly dead lookalikes, and that kind of circles back into why I don't eat amanitas. All right, last tree here, folks, I promise, is the Doug fir. And there are a handful of edibles. I'm going to highlight one specifically that is very unique to this region of Bay Area under fir. I think they grow in Mendocino as well, but I've never found them there. And that's what some people call the chocolate porcini. People call them the fib kings. It's Boletus fibrillosus. I think I'm always pushing the chocolate porcini name. I think it's the best. So it's a porcini with a really, really dark brown cap, and that strong netted reticulation on the stem. I've only ever found these in a couple spots, and one of them is Marin, Point Reyes, and they'll fruit sometimes in the summer, like literally early fall or summer if we're having mild weather and fog. And they taste very similar to porcini, and they're really cool. And not a lot of people are targeting them in my experience. So you can go out and find these under Doug fir. So mostly people think pine. Sometimes people are now thinking oak for porcini, but you can find this chocolate one under Doug fir. So a really cool one. And then while you're out there, you can also look for this other chanterelle, the Pacific chanterelle or Pacific golden. It's a smaller statured chanterelle that grows in a number of habitats, but you will find them in Doug fir, in Marin, in Sonoma County. They're delicious. We were talking about this at dinner. Sometimes they're often less muddy and wet, in my experience, than the ones that Liz was holding up earlier that grow with oaks. So they're easier to clean and maybe have a little stronger fragrance sometimes. I really enjoy those. And then there is a white chanterelle. I find these more in Mendocino County, but I have found these in Sonoma County as well in similar habitats. Looks just like a golden chanterelle, but it's white, and they're really tasty and delicious as well. All right, so quickly going to touch on, and I've kind of mentioned it already a few times here, there's not a lot of habitat to look for mushrooms legally in Sonoma County, Bay Area, Marin. One of the few is Salt Point State Park, and it's about, from here, it's, I guess, a couple hours. From where I live, it's about an hour and 20 or so. Up the coast, it's like almost the northernmost point in Sonoma County. I guess that would be more like Sea Ranch and stuff, but it's up there. And they do encourage mushroom hunting. It used to be a 5-pound limit per day. That's been dropped down to a 2-pound per day, which, I understand why, because sadly there's nowhere else to go. So everyone goes there. It gets hit really aggressively. So for the sake of the forest, they've lowered those, and I think that's totally fine. You can find a lot of the mushrooms I've listed here today. I'm not going to name them all, but tons of edible mushrooms can be found there. I'm partial to going there for these three, the winter trio, which again have been fruiting tremendously right now. I talked about the hedgehogs. I talked about the black trumpets, and there's one other mushroom, this yellow one in my hand, that make up, again, what's known as the winter trio, which is really common, or a really fun group of mushrooms to target in winter months in Sonoma County. So the last one of those is called the winter chanterelle, or the yellowfoot, and it's related to chanterelles. It has those kind of false gills, ridges, and they're called a yellowfoot because I guess you can see here the base, which is often buried in the duff, is bright yellow, and they're delicious, edible. In good years, you can find these by the hundreds, and it's like hard work picking them all, and they are absolutely delicious. You can dry them, and they take on a really nice flavor. I've heard people say they have like a Parmesan flavor to them when you dry them. You can make powders, and you can also rehydrate them. They rehydrate really well, and they grow alongside the black trumpets and the hedgehogs if you're lucky. So there's some photos of all of them, and then every year I was telling someone here earlier tonight, my favorite thing to do is make chowder with the winter trio, and I crave it every year. And then I usually crisp up some black trumpets to put on top, bacon if you want, but one of my absolute favorite meals. All right, so we got Salt Point, and then the only other place legally is Point Reyes State Park, Point Reyes National Seashore. They have a different volume limit, 2 gallons plus 1 mushroom per adult per day. So like, I guess picture a 2-gallon bucket. And then if you find a large porcini or something else, that doesn't count. That could be a separate thing, which that's nice because 1 porcini, if you find a jumbo, could fill your whole 2 gallons. So there you have it. I have a nice photo of poison oak on here because there is tons of poison oak in Point Reyes. So beware if you're out there. I should have said this about Salt Point. There's very, very little up there. So it's a little further, but it's a nice place. I'm not saying it doesn't exist there because it does, but not nearly as often. Point Reyes is huge. And there are so many different habitats out there that it'll take many times of going out there probably before you find edible mushrooms, unless you get lucky or you go with somebody. Because it took me the first year, I knew chanterelles were fruiting out there. I knew people were finding them, and it took me a long time to actually find trees with them. And same with porcini. But again, I feel like you kind of have to earn it by going out on the journey. Okay, I'm going to briefly talk, and I know we're getting close here, about mushrooms in other places. Because again, if you get lucky enough, I want to say, to become like obsessed with mushrooms, you're going to be looking for them constantly, and you're not always going to be able to be out Point Reyes, Salt Point. So your neighborhood, your school campus, parks, gardens, grassy areas, business lots, anywhere you go, you're going to be looking for mushrooms. And again, if you're lucky, you're not only going to want to find edible mushrooms because you can't find them year round. I think it's a lucky thing to be like, just want to find any and all mushroom, because then you're set. Year round, you can find weird stuff. Again, apartment complexes finding cool boletes, oyster mushrooms growing all over the place. This was like a little olive leaf cryptomerasmius that Damon Ty posted about a few years ago. He set out a challenge for people to try to go find it during COVID. So I was like double masked out there looking through olive leaves. What a time. But I found it. I actually found the very first documentation of it in Sonoma County, or at least on Instagram. It turns out they're pretty common, but just no one's looking through urban oak duff. There you go. College campuses might be my favorite. I've had tons of fun and success finding freaking weird mushrooms on college campuses. There tend to be, here's the checklist: year-round irrigation, lots of wood chips, and exotic trees on college campuses. So that leads to just like different mushrooms. Plus, they're usually over irrigating and refreshing wood chips every year. So that's like mushroom food. So if you go to campuses looking for mushrooms, I found some really, really interesting, cool mushrooms that I've never found anywhere else except for on college campuses. This one, the freckled dapperling, echinoderma, which is also is it the order, or maybe it's a genus for like starfish and certain sea animals, and they're characterized by 5-point radial symmetry. So if you put a line down the middle, I guess, or the side, there's the 5 points. And literally that one example had exactly that. Really weirdo mushroom. Never seen it anywhere else. Absolutely stunning. I found these in August a couple years in a row. I don't see them anymore. This was at Sonoma State University. Here's another rare one I found at Sonoma State. Melanophyllum, the red-spored dapperling. I found this in August of 2021. I was cleaning out a closet like a month ago, and I found a box, and it said for Hart. And this dude Hart is like a DNA guru in Sonoma County, and I haven't opened it yet. I'm 99% sure it's one of these that I collected, dried, put in a box, and never gave to Hart. So if you're listening, I will get it to you someday soon. But apparently it's a rare one. Again, when it comes to mushrooms, what does rare really mean? Who knows? But it's not documented a lot in Sonoma County. So excited about that one. And then my favorite, actually, now I mentioned I'm a middle school teacher. Everyone on campus knows, like, I am always looking for mushrooms on campus. I see students know what I'm doing. And now I have an army of students constantly looking for mushrooms and telling me or bringing me mushrooms. I've had to tell them, like, don't pick them. Don't bring me weird, gross old mushrooms. Photograph them. I'll give you some extra credit. Or we actually did a mycology unit this year, which is one of the coolest things I've done. And a few kids, I don't want to say all of them. Most of them still think it's freaking weird. But a couple kids got really stoked on taking spore prints and just mushrooms in general. So maybe a little flicker of excitement. But I find cool mushrooms all the time on campus. I found some landscape morels earlier this year. Some really strange Panaeolus that might have psilocybin in them. Just all sorts of beautiful stuff. And then I found a bucket list mushroom of mine this year. I guess it's getting blocked. I should have shut that. The branched skanklet or Dendrocolibia. And this is like a really cool parasitic mushroom. It grows on decaying Lactarius alnicola, which is the milk cap. And it's just this really cool mushroom. The branches produce asexual spores, and then the gills produce sexual spores. And then they grow out of these. So these little white balls in the bottom right corner are called sclerotia. And they start white and then they stay on these decaying mushrooms. And then the next year they'll fruit out of those. So they start white, and then here's some black ones. I found those about 2 weeks ago on my campus. Sorry, I found all of these like 2 months ago or maybe 6 weeks ago, but I found some sclerotia forming. So then I took a photo of that, and I'm going to try to go to that same spot next year and see if I can find these dendrocolibia, because they're kind of hard to find. They're elusive. They had been to me, and then I found them growing on my campus, which was an incredible treat. So I always encourage people to not focus on edibles and just look for mushrooms all the time. Quickly here, other edibles you can find in Sonoma County: Hericium coralloides, grows in a lot of settings. I used to find these all the time in Point Reyes. And then I was saying this at dinner, this one tree that produced 6 to 7 months a year, it burned 5 years ago in the fire. And I still go out there sometimes just hoping like maybe it spread somewhere, but I've never found it since. And I don't have any consistent spots anymore, but it's a lion's mane relative. I like them better than lion's mane. The Prince Agaricus, someone brought one of these in here today. These grow in all sorts of different settings. You can find these even sometimes late summer in Sonoma County. It's got that almond marzipan smell to it. Really cool edible. This is one that's under discussed. I feel like you can find enoki mushrooms growing on lupin, like coastal lupin in Sonoma County. And I don't know if this is like the Flammulina lupinicola. I don't know if that species is like fully accepted, because you'll see other names sometimes too, but they do grow on coastal lupin. Oysters everywhere, all sorts of different trees. It's a shrub. Sorry, I should have said that. Yeah, it's a shrub. There's lupin all over Sonoma County. I think it's specific to the coastal. I don't know the species of lupin though. Oysters you'll find all over the place. These shaggy parasol you find all over the place in urban settings too. I tend not to eat stuff in urban settings, just probably, I don't know, herbicides or human engagement. Cool and weird mushrooms of Sonoma County. I've talked about a lot of these, but one group I do want to talk about quickly are the stinkhorns. And there were some of these little eggs on the ID table today. I guess they look kind of like this little golf ball, rubbery golf ball. These things are so bizarre. This will freak out middle schoolers and get them kind of interested, because they smell like death. They reek. They encourage insects and stuff to come to them because they smell like carrion. And then they have this black goo. It's called gleba, and they get covered in it. You can sort of see some of the remnants of it in there. The flies or insects get covered in this gleba and then fly around and basically spread the spores for them. Some urban areas, they're everywhere. And then other areas, they seem to not grow at all. But a really fun, weird one. Talk about to get someone interested in mushrooms, and if you show them this alien growing in their yard, it's pretty weird. There's a couple. Oh yeah, you can really see the goo here, the gleba. And I promise, you put your nose in there, they reek gnarly. Someone on social media, a friend of people in here, recently posted trying to eat them, and it's known that they're technically edible. I'd never met anyone eat one, or that had tried it. And they cut up one of the young eggs, and they showed footage of it. They look pretty good. I'm not like, they couldn't have done a better job cooking them, I don't think. Like, they caramelized them, didn't burn them. They look pretty good. But the claim was that it was foul. I think no matter what, that death smell comes through. So maybe there's an application, a way to cook them. I've never heard of it. I've certainly heard of a couple other people claiming to try them, but no, thank you. Here's a really weird one. I've only found this once. What is it? Lysurus, the lantern stinkhorn. but pretty bizarre. They have the same concept here where they start as an egg. They have this gleba really just on like the tip there, and they get covered in insects that fly around and spread the spores. All right, so speaking of weird mushrooms in Sonoma County, in urban settings, you can find psychedelic mushrooms all over the place sometimes. All right, psilocybe eleni is really common in urban environments, and they're represented by kind of this caramel colored cap. They will turn blue when handled, and they contain strong amounts of psilocybin. I'll show you something that there are deadly lookalikes that you need to be aware of, but people have in their mind, I think, psilocybin growing with like cow patties and stuff. That is not true in Sonoma County. They do not grow on manure. That's more of a humid regions thing. In Sonoma County, they grow in wood chips. All right, in places where sometimes there are hundreds or thousands of people walking by them daily and would have no idea. Here's a college campus with a lot. They don't always fruit like that, but sometimes they do. And there they are. And these psilocybes that grow here in Sonoma County, I believe they're all thought to be from Australia, and they have higher concentrations of psilocybin than the psilocybe cubensis that is grown typically. That if you have bought some from somebody, or I guess now you can buy them all over the Bay Area and stuff. But they're smaller, but per pound or whatever, they have a lot stronger concentration. They have kind of these like dark purple spores that sometimes will get caught on the stipe there. Not always, but you can see them in the webbing there. And then there's a little bit of bluing happening. This one small one here is like an undeveloped one, an aborted one that won't fully develop, but it really turned blue. You can't just base it off of a mushroom turning blue, though. Again, there's a checklist for these, but that is one of them. And they're really, yeah, interesting mushroom. There you have campus in the background. I think I was dehydrating these for DNA sequencing, of course. There's this one here, the psilocybe cyanescens, which to me, I affiliate more with the Bay Area. I don't find these a ton in Sonoma County. I have some years. They're the wavy cap. Really known for like Golden Gate Park, San Francisco, at least historically. There's kind of a whole thing where whether the one I just showed you, psilocybe eleni, and this psilocybe cyanescens, are they two different species? Are they all one species? Some people are trying to regroup them all and saying those aren't separate species. They're all just one thing. It's a little controversial. I think people have strong opinions on it. I have no idea. They're very similar, but whatever is happening here, the morphology of these cyanescens, they have this wavy cap. Everything else about them is quite similar. And then there's the ovoids or Ovoidiocystidiata. I've only found them once in Sonoma County, but it was a very large flush in a really, really funny urban area. Is that all I have of the photo? Yeah, but less common and a little bit different looking. But there you have it. I'm going to skip over. I'll just give you a little taste because there's so many different wormholes you can go down in the mushroom world. I'm not even at liberty to really talk about this. Liz here is a dye expert. But basically, you can dye natural fibers, all sorts of tremendous colors with mushrooms, and they grow all over Sonoma County. And there's a spattering of them right there. I'm not even going to... I want to show you this one because I'm proud of this one. There's one mushroom called dead man's foot or dog turd fungus. And do you get brown from it?
Yeah.
Pink? Yeah, you can it's all chemistry and science, the whole dyeing thing. It's really fascinating. I'm really intrigued. I haven't gone down the wormhole yet, but it's called dead man's foot. And I swear this is the best ever depiction of this mushroom being called dead man's foot. Like it looks like a toe out of the ground. I never quite get the reaction I'm expecting. But yeah, so dead man's foot. You'll find these in the summer. Like again, they kind of just look like dog poop. You kick them, spores go everywhere, but you can dye really tremendous colors. the jack-o'-lantern mushroom, which was here too. Liz held it up earlier. So this is the state mushroom. Oh, sorry, gosh. This is the mushroom that a lot of people wish was a state mushroom because it's very specific to California. It's toxic and it glows in the dark and it can be used to dye mushrooms crazy cool colors. So a lot of the cooler mushroom folks were really pushing for this to be the state mushroom. It didn't get the push from the state. So this is like the honorable mention. Crazy cool mushroom, jack-o'-lantern. Again, it's called that because it glows in the dark. I think you have to go into a really dark room or find a specimen that's just tremendously glowy to see it. I've never seen it. Or do a long exposure photograph and you can see them glowing in the dark. So really cool mushroom. Why is that there? Oh, okay. I accidentally moved a slide. I'm gonna skip that for now. Biofluorescent mushrooms. If you saw me earlier, I had like a little flashlight looking at mushrooms. Some mushrooms don't glow in the dark, but they react to UV or black light. And it's just like a cool thing. We don't even necessarily know why. There's lots of theories. But when you go down this wormhole of mushroom mania, you got to get a black light, and any mushroom you find, you shine it on there. Or when you're hiking in the woods in the dark, you'll shine it and see all sorts of weird things that react to the UV light. So here's some mushrooms. Again, they're not glowing in the dark, but they're reacting. So here it is, and then here it is with that. And then because I'm going to end this by talking about Soma briefly, I was just at mushroom camp, or Soma camp it's called, and this little journey that I went on that was like blew my mind is that some mushrooms maybe have biofluorescent spores, and this one mushroom, this entoloma, was clearly reacting to the black light, and spent hours working with SF Microscopy Society, San Francisco Microscopy Society, and they taught me so much cool stuff about making slides, and they have microscopes with UV lights in them. And basically, we theorize, we think that this entoloma species has biofluorescent spores, but the funky part is that not all of the spores were reacting. So the hypothesis is that some spores have oil in them, like it's called oil inclusions, and maybe all the spores do at one point, depending on their maturity. And the oil in the spore is there maybe to give energy to the spore, not fully sure. The hypothesis was that the spores with the oil inclusions were fluorescing, and the ones right next to them in some cases weren't. So it's lots of questions still to be asked, but it was a really, really cool little adventure I went on at mushroom camp last month. All right, I've talked a lot about these mushrooms already, so I'm going to skip through them, except for I do want to highlight this one here because I talked about psilocybin mushrooms, the psilocybes. And if you are looking for them, there is a deadly lookalike. Now, these are not on the flyers. These typically aren't associated much with deaths. I don't want to say they haven't. I'm sure they have. This mushroom does have amatoxins, which is the toxin that can kill you in those other amanitas. The only reason someone I think would eat one of these is if they were looking for psilocybin mushrooms, because they will grow in the same habitat in wood chips, and they can look similar if you don't know what you're looking for. All right. They have different color spores, so doing spore prints can help you there. But here I have psilocybe in the middle, and then this galerina, the funeral bells next to it. And then here's psilocybe, and then funeral bells here. So to me, they look very different, but if you're just looking for little kind of brown mushrooms in wood chips, and sometimes the stipe, it's a little more like grayish scales on it, but I've seen them where they almost look greenish, not blue, but again, people tend to have wishful thoughts when they're early on looking for mushrooms. So this is not one to just eat brown mushrooms, all right? There are deadly lookalikes that contain amatoxins. Amanita muscaria is a whole thing. Yes.
So we had a member, Kurt Haney, when was it, Carol? 3 or 4 weeks ago?
Yeah.
He ran into a couple, it's an Asian couple,
There's just a woman and she collected, the deadly ballerina, but.
Thinking it was candy kit, right?
Yeah, and so I showed her that the stalk is, stems is
Right.
sticks versus bends, but she was gonna go take them to her friend and, she quickly dumped them out.
Oof.
I
What-
had one mushroom in the car and I had a candy cap in the car, so I showed her the difference.
And I've heard-
But
That's okay. That's a good point. That's an yeah. I guess
I've heard David Aurora tell a similar story where he was, now that person only had Gallerina, right?
where was this? Okay.
And David Aurora bumped into a person that had candy caps and Gallerina in their basket. I mean, that's really hard to understand, but.
It's that.
The State Department of Health put out these flyers. They're gonna include that next year.
They should, yeah, okay. It comes down to, again, the wishful thought process of like you're in the woods, you think you're gonna find something, and then if you've never found a real candy cap to compare it to, looking in books is not necessarily enough. So I can't urge enough going out with mycological societies, experts, forays. There's all sorts of places and resources now that you can utilize, because that is a very scary thought. Yeah, right. If you didn't, yeah. Gosh, yeah. In my slides, I have the whole checklist for candy caps. I should have touched, but I did not. But they're in there, and I'd be happy to share these with anyone eventually at the end of this. So we'll end it here with the Amanita ocreata and the Amanita phalloides. This year has got to be the most poisonings in recent history.
Normally it's one or two or
Yeah, a couple a year usually. There's been in the 40s.
40.
Which is terrifying. And let me go to this one here. It's mostly been the Amanita phalloides, the death cap. This is a fall fruiter, and they were so abundant this year, really, really abundant because of the mild summer, crazy rains. And yeah, more mushroom poisonings than I've certainly ever heard. And it's pretty scary. So again, getting the information out there, I think, is the most part. I think maybe people eating these don't even know that there's something to be worried about, like that a death cap even exists. I'm not fully sure, but it's certainly been alarming. I'm sure anyone into mushrooms this year has been sent from family members or friends all these headlines, and it's certainly not good for the brand. But it's also a great opportunity for education, which I know Liz was involved in a segment in the news. Cron 4, and there's so some media outlets have done some good education with this. Early on, it was all fear mongering, scary stuff, state telling you not to forage for mushrooms, and alarmist. Yes, I don't want to make claims. From what I have heard, there are edible amanitas, and yeah, but what's the other one? The straw. Yes. Say it again. Volvariel, yes, the straw mushroom.
Oh,
Yeah, so I don't want to speak for those people, but there are some other mushrooms that are similar-ish, and in these regions, I don't know if Amanita phalloides exists, so maybe they're coming from areas in other countries where they're accustomed to eating these without the fear of a deadly lookalike. I'm not certain. That's what my understanding is. I've also heard backlash about making strong claims about all of this, but I think we have evidence suggesting that now. Again, for beginners, even for me, I'm 10 years in, I'm not even eating amanitas. To avoid, any of this, you can avoid eating white-gilled white mushrooms or any mushrooms with white gills at all. Because the Amanita phalloides here is more of like a metallic green. But the problem too is it varies a lot in color. It can be yellow, whitish, all sorts of different color. It can have stuff on the cap, sometimes not. It'll have stuff on the stem sometimes. The variance is a lot, is tremendous, and they're also spreading to new habitat all the time. So people are seeing them in crazy numbers lately, and they're going from different host trees. They're not from here in California. They're believed to be brought in, I think, on cork oaks, maybe by the wine industry or the nursery industry. and they're spreading rapidly and maybe displacing other mushrooms if you look at it from that, but certainly scary because they are deadly and been eaten more lately than ever, it seems. So here's a lot of them in different forms here. They start as a little egg and kind of hatch out, and they sometimes have that skirt at the bottom, the partial veil. There are mushrooms that people eat in Sonoma County, that other amanitas, that sometimes can look similar. The cocora I talked about earlier often has like veil remnants on the top. And these mushrooms aren't supposed to have that if you read the books, but sometimes they do. Obviously, like they don't follow the rules and stuff. So this is the number one mushroom to learn. If you're trying to get into edible mushrooms, learn this mushroom, find it, handle it, do all the things, and then like never eat a mushroom that looks anything like that, and then like work your way back from that. And then there's all sorts of mushrooms that look nothing like this. There are no deadly lookalikes. You can get experts to take you to those, or at least explain how to find them, and then help like demystify the whole process. I do not try to encourage people to eat mushrooms, really. Like it took me a while of finding mushrooms, psyching myself up for it, and just like slowly doing it. I do not encourage you to just go out first foray, try to find mushrooms to eat. Some people do that, but that spooks me a little bit too. You want to become familiar, take photographs, get books, come to mushroom talks, all that kind of stuff, and then you'll feel comfortable eventually. And then I'll leave that with this here. So how to get involved. Again, you guys are at a meeting here. You're probably plugged in with MSSF. Wherever you live, hopefully there's a club. If not, most of these are remote now, Zoom. I'm part of the Sonoma County Mycological Association. We have monthly meetings as well. We do post them on Facebook live stream. You can come on up to the Sebastopol Grange. We have free meetings, do a potluck. We're going to actually have one on Zoom on Thursday, which is going to be all our scholarship winners, or not all of them, but a handful of scholarship winners are going to talk about the research they're doing. So if you follow Sonoma County Mycological Association on Facebook, Instagram, we'll be posting about that. I know people had mushrooms of the Redwood Coast. There's all sorts of great books for the area. And then social media, like I would never encourage people to get on social media if you're not. But if you are, Facebook, there are some great groups. If you can kind of avoid the social media part of it, there's great information to be found on there. Instagram too. iNaturalist, which is great. Great place to get mushrooms ID'd and just see what people are finding in your area, and just look at mushrooms that have been ID'd by other people, because just seeing mushrooms on repeat, now obviously through a screen is different, but it can at least get the ball rolling. And it's something you can do in the off season. Look through posts from your area all summer long and get ready to go in the fall. Yeah, I'll leave all this stuff. We do forays for Soma. We had mushroom camp I touched on. It's our big annual event every January. 4 days out in Occidental. Crazy fun times. Really interesting. I'd be happy to talk about that in person, or again, follow us on social media. I run the Soma, or I'm one of the people that does the Soma social media. And again, it's been a while since I've done a podcast because I have young kids and wasn't inspired, but I just put out an episode called Mushroom Camp, where you can hear me blab about Soma Mushroom Camp and some of the fun little adventures I had there. So yeah. Oh, and then my next talk, I'm going to talk this Saturday in Guerneville for the Russian River Fungi Fest. It's not going to be the same talk. It's going to be kind of like middle school mycology or Sonoma County Mushrooms 101, but a little bit more elementary. And that seems like it could be a fun event. It's the first one ever in Guerneville, so I look forward to that. And with that, y'all, I'm done. I really appreciate it. Yes. The chowder recipe. Yes. How would I do that? Well, you can email me and I'll do it. Or it's basically, there's this famous chanterelle soup, like the escoffiers. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. French chanterelle soup. You basically do that. And then there's part of it where you like add egg into it. I don't do that part. And then instead of using chanterelles, I'm using hedgehogs and yellowfoot. You could use chanterelles too. Blend it all up, fold that back in. And then if you're really varsity, you'll bake your own sourdough bread. That photo was not mine, but I am into baking. So make your own sourdough bread bowl, put it in there, and then top it with some black trumpets that you crisp up and some bacon if you want. Oh, and then after you've made the soup, you chop up a bunch of potato really small and some celery and any other veggies you might want in it. Float it in there, cover it so until that stuff gets soft. Salt, pepper, all the stuff, porcini powder. Email me and I'll give you the less. Yes, yes. The Mushroom Pizza podcast. Years ago, for some like I'm not even into video games, but like my friends got me to play like some app where we were playing a video game together, and like the nickname I chose was like Mushroom Pizza, and I love pizza. I've like a whole nother journey in my life. I love pizza, love making pizza. I've worked in tons of pizza shops, and then love mushrooms too. So then that just kind of stuck. My friends, like sometimes I would just that's the name I would use, Mushroom Pizza. It was more like an inside joke. And then at some point I was like going around trying mushroom pizzas at places, like mushroom pizza slices, and like reviewing them. And then years later, when I was like gonna do a podcast, I just was like the mushroom pizza. I don't know, something about it, like I just love it. I do sometimes talk about pizza, but it's like it's all things mycology. And honestly, now in the last few years, there's so many spots in Sonoma County doing like wild mushroom pizzas that I usually will try to highlight a cool business doing mushroom pizza, but it's not just pizza at all. In fact, I don't even talk pizza this most recent one. Yes.
A pizza shop. Do you pizzeria or is it something different?
Yeah, pizzeria. Yeah, pizzeria. Yeah, yes, yeah, pizza shop, pizzeria. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So honestly, I don't find in Point Reyes, I don't find those three very often. They should be out right now. Like, so they like colder weather though. So like definitely after Porcini, everything started about a month early, it seemed like. Anyone in here find those out there in Point Reyes? I know for sure they are found. But it's much, if you go to Salt Point right now, you can't miss them. I know it's much further. I know. There's a little like kind of like hotel motel up there next to the park you can stay in. It's not Timber Cove, like, but I hear you. It's a long journey. But you will find them for sure. Yes. Oh, I love that. And I didn't mention this either. There's tan oaks are getting hit really hard too, if not even harder by sudden oak death. I know, I mean, some people will say like you can spray your boots and stuff before entering forest. I don't even know what you spray them with, I forget, but I think more just spread the word that we need to protect our forest more and open up other parks so that not everyone's going to these spots. With the pines, I think it's like beetles are involved, and then other things get them once they're already getting hit. The oaks and the tan oaks, it's sudden oak death. So I don't have a good answer for that. Yeah. Yes.
One thing you can do is not bring firewood from one place to another.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, that's a rule that I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where people are washing their boots before they go from one apartment to another.
I think that's like, yeah, people like, I know.
Places they do that.
Yeah, I worked in restoration for a little bit, and like a few places would do that, but I think it's more ceremonial. But yeah, I hope you find the winter trio there. Again, I know they exist, but it's so vast there. Like there's so you might hit someday. I will say, if you know how to navigate iNaturalist, you could from home see if anyone's posted any of the winter trio ever there, and then go to those spots. That's what I would do. Yeah. Yep. All right. Thanks, y'all. I appreciate it.